So how many of you have seen Zeusical the musical? Okay, well, anyway, that's from Zeusical the musical, and that's the theme for this morning, because Zeusical the musical, the main plot from that, comes from this book, Horton the Who. Now, Horton the Who, if you don't know the story, you can buy the book. You can probably take it out from our church library. Or it's also a movie that you can watch, and I know that can be found on Xfinity. Anyway, we're looking at that, and we're going to particularly come back and look at one small voice in the universe, one true friend in the universe who believes in me. So, Dr. Seuss wrote these books, and that was his pseudonym. Let me just give you a flavor of the beginning of the book. On the 15th day of May, in the jungle of Newell, in the heart of the day, in the cool of the pool, he was splashing, enjoying the jungle's great joys, when Horton the elephant heard a small noise. So Horton stopped splashing. He looked towards the sound. "That's funny," thought Horton. "There's no one around." Then he heard it again, just a very faint yelp, as if some tiny person was calling for help. "I'll help you," said Horton, "but who are you, where?" He looked and he looked. He could see nothing there, but a small speck of dust blowing past through the air. So that's the beginning of the story. And actually, on top of that little pink flower, there is a speck, and that speck is where all of the people of Whoville live. The theme that Dr. Seuss is trying to get across in this movie is a person, no matter how small. And it's really interesting to me that we can take in very big philosophical, theological thoughts from things like stories that are very fanciful like this, because our defenses are down, and somebody's just playing with us, and then whoa, we just got hit. So the issue for Dr. Seuss, when he was writing this book, he wrote it in 1954 after coming back from Japan. And when he was in Japan, he had children there draw pictures of what their aspirations were. What they wanted to know was what effect World War II and the post-war era had on the aspirations of children. So he looked at 15,000 drawings, and this is one of them that I want you to see. So instead of being generals or wanting to be generals or kamikaze pilots, by this time, children wanted to be farmers and teachers and lawyers and space explorers. And this young 11-year-old wanted to be a politician. And okay, well, that's all right. He can be a politician, but what's really unique is what he says about this is, "Vote for me, I shall make Japan a good country, so there will be no wars." And so the children of Japan were not into imperialist Japan anymore. Freudian slip. Okay. But what they were into was peace, and so that voice was the voice that Seuss wanted heard, and so in the story there's this character Jojo, which Sue was playing, and Jojo's voice needs to be heard. And until Jojo's voice is heard, the rest of the animals in the jungle are not going to protect that little flower that has the speck on it, because they don't understand that there's a whole world under there. So that's the big message in this book. A person's a person, no matter how small. Another important thought or idea is that everything's a matter of perspective. we all need to be doing perspective taking. So I want you to look at that word and you see how it's a speck. Dr. Seuss is so clever. So we're going to do some perspective taking. My perspective is different than your perspective, and I'm seeing things a little differently than you're seeing things, and we both may have truth. But what we need to do maybe is to change perspectives and do some perspective taking in order to come to a greater truth. This is true in all sorts of communities, including in our own community. There are so many of these little important thoughts that are in this book. Perseverance is another one, that everybody has something to give to the community. The whole story is a metaphor of faith. But this morning, I'm just going to not give you those other 4 sermons that I could get out of this book. I want us to look at our text that is, let anyone with ears to hear listen. So you have Horton, and he's got these huge, big ears. He's got the biggest ears in the jungle, and therefore he hears the who, but nobody else hears the cries of the who. And because of that, they ridicule him. The kangaroos tell him that he is wasting his time on that which is imperceptible. But Horton, because he hears the who, he's got to do something. The monkeys come and they are merciless with him, and they're going to shoot those bananas at him. They mock him. Then they get this big black-bottomed eagle to pick up that little flower and fly it around to spread the who everywhere. But Horton is not going to be dismayed by that. He perseveres and he chases after that little flower to protect it. In the end, of course, Horton does rescue Whoville. And it's a wonderful it's a wonderful story. You need to watch it. You need to read it. And this is possible because Horton has ears to hear. So, in the context of this particular story, Horton Hears the Who. What I want us to do this morning is to look at prayer as two-way hearing. Usually we think of prayer as speaking, but unless there's also hearing, there's really no communication. And as I was looking at this story, it struck me that the kind of way in which Horton is teased by those that don't hear the who can happen in 21st century America with regard to our prayer. Lily Tomlin says, when we speak to God, we are said to be praying, but when God speaks to us, we are said to be schizoid. So we're good on the one end of prayer, but we're not so good on the other end of prayer. While I was playing with this concept of hearing and the importance of hearing in prayer, I saw a movie, and so I sent the women of Watch on Saturday to go see this movie, Breakthrough. For those of you that haven't heard of the movie, the executive producer is Steph Curry. Go Warriors, they'll get them on Monday, don't worry. It's based on a true story of a 14-year-old boy who was a basketball player, of course, otherwise Steph wouldn't have had anything to do with it. And he falls through the surface, and he's of a pond. That's ice, but thin ice, and it takes 15 minutes for him to be brought back to the surface. To get all of us on the same place with regard to the movie, I want you to watch the trailer.
Rise and shine. Breakfast is ready in 10 minutes.
And don't make me come back up there.
This is our town. It's a close-knit community, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone.
Hi, Miss J.
Hey, how are you girls? And we're always there for each other.
Nice sermon, Pastor.
What do you guys have on for the rest of the day?
Well, John has a basketball game.
Yeah, I've seen this guy hoop it up around here. This kid is so lit.
Text your mom tomorrow and tell her when and where to pick you up. And, don't do anything stupid.
Love you guys.
Boys, get off the ice!
We're training for the Olympics, sir.
Cindy.
He's been underwater for more than 15 minutes. It's gonna be a recovery, not a rescue. I got something.
We got him!
We've done everything medically possible. There's nothing more we can do.
No. Please, God, send your Holy Spirit to save my son.
A 14-year-old St. Charles boy who spent 15 minutes trapped underwater is continuing to fight for his life.
I don't believe John will survive the night.
You don't know my son. He is a fighter, so I need you to be the best for John, and you just let God do the rest. You are my pride and joy. I can't wait to see you shoot those baskets and run up and down the court again.
The Smith family asked for one thing. Please pray for John.
In the water that day, I was ready to give up, but then I hear this voice telling me, go back. Either I'm nuts,
Or God's talking to you.
but I don't believe in God.
I believe it, but maybe that only goes so far with something like this.
I'm your pastor. I'm supposed to walk alongside you for as long as it takes.
Did you see the Facebook page? It's going viral.
Tommy,
I hope he's gonna be okay.
we're not gonna get through this alone. Whatever you have for me, for Brian, for John, I surrender.
Now, I promise you I'm not going to ruin the movie for you, but I am going to tell you a little bit of the story as it relates to hearing, because I think it's really important for us to understand that prayer and how God speaks to us is in myriad ways, and this movie helps us. Dad says, don't do anything stupid. John does not have ears to hear. So John and two of his friends walk out onto the partially frozen lake. A neighbor from the shore warns the guys, get off the ice. But again, they don't have ears to hear, so all three of them fall through the ice. The neighbor calls 911. Having ears to hear, the emergency rescuers show up, and they get two of the boys out of the water very quickly, but they can't find John. One of the rescuers, Tommy, has ears to hear, and he hears a voice saying to him when they're about ready to give up. The voice says, go back. Thinking that it's his chief speaking to him, Tommy tries again. He reaches down, he finds the boy, and brings John back up to the surface. The emergency teams out in the field and then back at the hospital, they work on him as hard as they can. For 1 hour, he has no pulse. Finally, they all look at each other. They're going to give up, and then John's mom is in the waiting room. They know that. The physician says, let's all get out and let mom come in. So weeping Joyce comes in to her lifeless boy on the gurney, and she pleads with the Holy Spirit to breathe into her son. The Holy Spirit has ears to hear, and the instrumentation attached to John's body start to flash. You saw that in the clip. And a pulse is registered. John is transferred to another hospital. The doctor there says, you know what, this is wonderful that he has this pulse, but there is no way, even if he survives, that he is going to be anything but a vegetable. Joyce, the mom, does not have ears to hear. And she continues with hope and belief and tells the doctor, just do your best, and we're going to let God do the rest. For a moment, John seems to have a sense of his mom's voice. He has ears to hear Mom, and he squeezes some hands. Mom finally hears her husband, and she realizes that she's not in control of what's happening. God's in control. And so she goes to the roof and she asks for forgiveness. God hears her prayer, and the way she knows that is that God sends some snowflakes down, and she hears the snowflakes. Which is all to say that God speaks in a myriad of ways, and we hear in a myriad of ways. The family asks the community to pray. The community has ears to hear, and they pray. And the question that I'm going to leave you with is, does God hear their prayers? What happens? I'm not going to tell you. You need to go see the movie. It is an absolute wonderful experience, but be sure to bring Kleenex, okay? Because it has a lot of prayers and a lot to teach us. Like I said before, usually when we think of prayer, we think in terms of our speaking to God and God listening, and that is one perspective. So I want you to see that word. See that speck in the middle there? But prayer is also our having ears to hear God speaking to us. In Seuss's book, Dr. Seuss's book, Horton hears a who speaking, and one who hears Horton speaking, but none of the rest of the animals and none of the rest of the people in Whoville hear that. It takes a certain thing inside of us to be able to hear. And sometimes when I hear God speaking to me, I feel like this is like Horton. That why isn't everybody else getting this the same way that I'm getting it? I'm going to be absolutely honest with you. I hear God speaking to me all the time. God speaks to me through the beauty and power of nature. I told you the story about eucalyptus trees, flowers, a bird, butterflies. God speaks to me through circumstances, a colleague's brilliance. God speaks in books and movies, the Bible, a walk on the beach, through highway billboards, the words of a friend, in dreams, in hunches, in scriptures, sermons, in song, in liturgy, in hymns. God is always speaking. The question for me, and I think the question for you, is are we always listening? Not just when we come to church, not just when we are doing our devotions. God speaks to us in those times, but God is always speaking. The movie Breakthrough is being used, I put it in this sermon, because my sister Marie saw it earlier in this week. She came home and she told me about it. And because I had Horton the Who in my mind, I heard God speaking through her that I needed to use that story in this sermon. And so I went on Thursday to see this movie. Now, The last time I remember going to the movie theater was when Les Miserables first came out, the first day. That's a long time ago. It takes God to say, go to the movies, to get me to go to the movies. Once I saw the movie, it was confirmed that I could and would be using Breakthrough, which is why I sent the women of Watch to go see it on Saturday. We are also using this book, Horton Hears a Who, because God spoke to me. It was what I'm going to now call Easter Saturday, and Court came up and he said, I got a couple of books for you, The Parables of Dr. Seuss and The Gospel According to Dr. Seuss. I heard God speaking directly through Court Bender that we were going to use Dr. Seuss's something from Dr. Seuss in this Holy Humor Sunday. Now, I also have to get confirmation back that it's really God talking, right? And so I went home, I looked online, and I found a Zeusical communion service. And I came back on Easter Saturday, and I was ecstatic. Court can confirm this. He had no idea why I was so excited, but God has just spoken to me through Court with regard to Dr. Seuss being the theme for this morning. I think that when I think about it for a minute, that I hear God speaking in this myriad of ways because I am paying attention. I'm listening. I am actually expecting God to speak. God speaks no differently to me than he does to you. But the question is, are we all listening? Are we all expecting God to be communicating with us? Jesus walked on this earth for 33 years. And some of those people, with Jesus standing right there, had ears to hear, and some of them didn't. My best answer as to why some heard and some didn't was that some of them were open to the possibility of the Messiah coming, and others were content with their lives just the way they were. Those who were open saw something in Jesus that they desired. He brought hope and a new perspective on life to them, and they listened. The scribes and the Pharisees, they didn't want their lives changed, challenged, or made worse by the likes of Jesus preaching the kingdom of God. Who needs love and grace when working for one's way to heaven is achievable and in one's own control? Anyway, thinking about this, I also started to think about what is it that helps us to be open to God speaking to us and in a new way and reordering our world so that we become a part of God's world instead of our God being just a speck in our world. And when I thought about that, there's a lot of void experiences. When people have void experiences, they tend to open up. When a loved one dies, or we lose a job, or we get a divorce, we end up in the hospital, we have a serious accident, some kind of personal failure, we become open to reordering our shattered lives and have them put back together in a new way. That happened to me. I came to faith when my mom died. When I would tell you that when my mom died, that was the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life. On the other hand, I will tell you that it is the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. It was the worst thing because I loved my mom, and she wasn't there anymore, but it was the best thing because God used it to open me up to an understanding of God in a brand new way. Fortunately, it's not just bad things that open us up to new learnings, but also good things can do that, because good things can shatter our lives too. Falling in love, getting married, the birth of a child, a promotion, a new job. All of these big good things also upset the apple cart, and we are open in new ways. For the jungle animals to hear those little who people, Jojo needed to add his little yop. With that little yop, the jungle animals finally heard. Now, I don't know, sometimes it's a little thing that happens, sometimes it's a big thing, but something enables us to hear in a new way, to get a new perspective, if you will, on life, and there being an invisible God out there. And that's what faith is all about. As we come to the table this morning, I invite you to come open to hearing God speak through the wine and the bread, through the breaking of the wine, the breaking of the bread, and the pouring of the cup. And as you come, remember the song, "One small voice in the universe, one true friend in the universe who believes in you." This is the Lord's table, and he invites any and all who want to trust in him to come and partake.